Rob here at Etrailer.com, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Curt Class 1 custom fit trailer hitch receiver on our 2018 C Class Mercedes. So here's what our hitch is going to look like once we have it installed. You can see it's have a really clean, almost factory appearance to it because the cross tube is going to be hidden completely behind the bumper, and all we're going to see is that receiver tube sticking out. So it's not going to be distracting from the looks of our Mercedes. And if we look at the side profile of our hitch, we can see that it's still going to be just underneath our bumper. It's not going to stick out. We're not going to have to worry about hitting our leg, all while having that nice clean appearance. Now it is a Class 1 hitch, which means it's going to give us an 1¼ inch by 1¼ inch receiver tube opening. It'd be great for some smaller bike racks, maybe 1 or 2 bikes, a small cargo carrier, or light duty towing. Now, however we're going to be using it, any accessory we want to mount up is going to mount to the hitch pinhole here on the side. Our hitch is going to accept a standard 1/2 inch pin and clip. Now these are not included, but you can pick them up here at Etrailer.com along with some locking devices to keep your accessories secure. Now if you do plan on doing some towing, we are going to have a spot to hook up our safety chains. And our connection point is going to be a plate style, welded to the bottom of the receiver tube. You can see we got plenty of room to get most size hooks on or off. Just want to keep in mind, if you have some really small ones, you may want to come from the front because the flange on the side is a little bit bigger, but we can still get our hooks on and off pretty easily. Now, if you're getting a hitch, you want to make sure that it's up for the task regardless of what you're going to be using it for. So as far as the weight rating goes, our hitch is going to have a 200-pound tongue weight. That's going to be the maximum downward pressure at the end of the receiver tube. It's also going to have a 2,000-pound gross trailer weight rating. That's how much it can pull, including the trailer and everything we have loaded on it. With all those numbers in mind, you do want to double check your Mercedes owner's manual because you don't want to exceed the manufacturer's recommended weight. Now, Curt does recommend using a safety strap when carrying any non-trailer loads, such as a bike rack or a cargo carrier. I'd like to give you a few measurements, and these are going to help you out when you're looking for accessories for your new hitch, like a bike rack or a cargo carrier. From the center of the hitch pin hole to the outermost edge of the bumper, you're right about 3 inches. That measurement's going to come in handy when you're looking at folding accessories to make sure you have enough room and they're not going to come in contact with the rear bumper. From the ground to the inside top edge of the receiver tube opening is right about 13 inches. And with that height, I would definitely recommend a bike rack or a cargo carrier with a raised shank. That way we can get a little bit more ground clearance out of it. As far as the installation goes, we are going to have to remove the rear fascia. However, we're not going to have to drill anything. We are going to have to do some minor trimming on the lower part of the fascia that we really can't see, but a lot of customers are going to be a little nervous about taking the fascia apart and taking everything off and then having to put it back on and make sure it lines up. But we'll show you some tricks and tips of how to do it, and we'll walk everything through together. To begin our installation, we're going to come to the back of our Mercedes, and at the very bottom, we're going to have several bolts that we're going to have to remove. We'll come to the very edge right by our exhaust. The corner here, right behind the wheel well, we'll have 1 bolt. We can move back. We'll have another one along that same edge. And then we're going to want to move towards the center, and right by our trunk pan, we're going to have another one that's going to be attached to the very bottom of the body here. We need to remove those 3 on each side. So we'll grab a 10mm socket and we'll pull them out. Now we want to move to the rear wheel well, right behind our tire. If we look at the liner here, we're going to have several of these Pushpin or Rivet style fasteners that are holding it in place. We need to remove it, so you want to grab a flat blade screwdriver, and we'll find one of the rivets, and we want to pop out that center section first. It's going to take all the tension off. Just kind of want to work that center section out. And once you have the center section pulled out a little bit, should be able to come behind the base of it with our screwdriver and pry it the rest of the way out. And if the 2 pieces come apart, that's okay, because whenever we go to put them back together, we can just put the center in and they'll go back together. But we want to remove all the Pushpin or rivet fasteners that are in the rear wheel well on each side, all the way up to where our fender meets our fascia. And with those removed, we're going to pull our fascia just a little bit. We're going to pull our wheel well liner back. And if we look inside, we're going to find 2 more of those push pins that we need to remove. They're going to come out the same way. So just take a flat blade screwdriver or a trim panel tool. You're going to pop out the center section and then pull the rest of the rivet out. You'll have one towards the bottom here, and then one just a little bit higher up on the fascia. You want to pull those out of the other side as well. Now if we come up right where our fender meets our fascia, we're going to see that we have a bolt going up into the body of our Mercedes. We need to remove it, so we want to grab an 8mm socket, and it'll help if you get a short extension. That way you can have a little bit of clearance away from the tire and away from the body. We'll pull that bolt out. Once you have the bolt removed, we're going to remove the one from the other side as well. We're going to move inside of our trunk. Now right as we open it up towards the top, we're going to have a tie-down hook on each side. We're going to pull these out. So you can grab a flathead screwdriver, and there's a really small notch, and you can kind of see the indentation. We need to pry that little line out right there, that little rectangled section. We need to pry it out, because our hook is going to act just like those push pins, just shaped a little different. So we'll pry that center section out, and we'll be able to remove the rest of the hook. Now we're going to pull the one off on the other side as well. Now if we move to the floor, we're going to have our tie-down hook that's on the bottom, that little silver loop. We need to remove those as well, so you want to take a flathead screwdriver. I'm actually going to come underneath the cover. I'm just going to pry it up a little bit so I can open it up and expose the nut that's holding it on underneath. I'm going to grab a T40 Torx bit, and I'm going to pull the tie-down hook out. We'll take out the other side as well. Right behind, towards the outside of the tie-down hook, we're going to have our cargo net on each side. Now the bottom, there's going to be a bar that's running across. If we grab that bar and we want to push towards the center of the car, we can see that it'll swing up, and we should be able to kind of pull towards the front and then pull towards the back, and we can remove the net. We'll move up, then we have this little access panel right here. We want to pull that cover off as well. We'll do that on both sides. Now if we go to the very back of our trunk, right towards the back seat, we're going to have two push pins that are actually holding that material to the floor. So we want to pull those out. Let's get a flat blade screwdriver, trim panel tool again. This time, it's just going to be a single push pin. There's no head on it. We just pull them out. So we just come underneath the base and pry the whole push pin up this time. Then we'll pull out the entire floor liner and put it aside. Next, we're going to move back towards our taillights. We want to pull that felt liner away so we can get behind our taillight and get access to the bolts that are holding it in place. So we just peel back our weather stripping a little bit. I'm going to take a plastic trim panel tool just to work behind that liner and start pulling it forward. And it is notched right here to go around the trunk support. So it'll just pull right out of the way. And that'll give us access so we can get in here and start removing all the fasteners. So if we look right where our tail light connection is, all of our electrical, if we go right around that, we're going to have a total of 3 studs that are coming through with nuts on them that we're going to have to remove. We'll grab an 8mm socket, and we can pull those out. You do want to be very careful. You don't want to drop the nut in between the body here, because it'll be extremely hard to get out. Now we have one last stud that's coming through towards the top, more a little bit towards the center of our trunk. Now that's going to be a 10mm head, so we'll grab a 10mm socket and we'll pull that stud out. Again, you want to be extremely careful, try not to drop that nut, because it will be very difficult to get it out. We're going to take the other side out as well. Now we need to remove our electrical plugs before we can pull our taillights out. If we look on the very top of the plug, there's a very small tab. We actually want to press in on that tab. Probably help if you use a screwdriver like I am. And then get your finger on the bottom to where we can squeeze it. And we're just going to start working that plug out, because it may be a little difficult to use your finger, but you want to keep squeezing that tab and start pushing away from the thing until we can get it unplugged. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. When you go to remove your taillight, the easiest way that I found is if we actually reach into the inside where that plug was, and I'm just going to start pushing my taillight straight back. That way hopefully it'll come out easily, and we don't have to worry about the alignment pins breaking or the studs breaking. Now it's a good idea to get an extra set of hands because we're at the point where we can remove our fascia. You want to start right where the fender meets the fascia at that corner there. You just grab the fascia and you can start pulling outward. That'll start releasing the clips. You just want to start working your way towards the center. Now once you get to about the taillight area, you may have to kind of pivot it so we can loosen these clips. And then also be mindful right here because our fascia is going to come up right around the trunk. So you may have to kind of start working it loose by hand until we can get it to come loose all the way. Alright, then we can slowly pull our fascia away because we are going to have some electrical connectors that we're going to have to disconnect. So on each side we're going to have this box. We want to squeeze the tabs on the top and bottom. May need to get a screwdriver because it is pretty small, a little hard to get to, but we want to disconnect this plug as well as the one on the other side, and we're going to have to undo all the cables, pulling them off these clips off the fascia so that we can get access, because we're not going to be able to unplug the wire from the car. And with everything disconnected, we're going to set our fascia aside where it won't get damaged. Now on the very side where we removed our fascia, we're going to have our heat shield here. We're going to have two bolts holding it in place. We need to remove it. So we'll grab a 10mm socket and pull both those out. Pull our heat shield out and we'll repeat that same process on the other side. Now behind the heat shield, if we move towards the center of the vehicle, we'll find our exhaust hanger. We're going to have one bolt on the top, and if we move underneath, there's going to be another one going up to the bottom right by the tailpipe. Now these are going to be external Torx bit bolts. Most people don't have those sockets, but what you can use is either a 12-point 10mm or a 12.3/8 socket to pull them out. And once we have the bolts removed, we want to rotate the exhaust hanger down and out of the way. And we'll do the same thing on the other side of our Mercedes. So right above our muffler on each side, if we look at our bumper beam, we're going to have studs that are coming through the back side towards the front of the car. We'll have two nuts on the outer section holding it in place. We need to remove those on both sides, so we'll take a 16mm socket and we'll pull the nuts off. And we'll pull the other side out as well. The other two studs that are on the other side of our bumper beam are going to be coming through on the inside of the trunk panel. You may need to lift the carpet up a little bit, but it'll be right here in that indentation where you have that wall on the side. So again, we want to grab that socket and pull those two nuts out. And we'll pull the other side out as well. You just want to be careful taking the last nut off because we don't want the bumper beam to fall down. With all the nuts removed, we can pull our bumper beam off and we'll set it aside. Now if we look at our bumper beam, we want to come to the inside where we have the studs that are be toward the center of our Mercedes. Now I already removed one, but we're going to need to remove all four of the inner bolts on our bumper beam. The easiest way I found to do it is if you take a cutoff wheel or a Dremel tool, I'm going to come extremely close to the head of that stud and go in as far as I can with my Dremel tool, and then come back with a chisel, knock that out, and knock out the stud with a hammer. Just want to take your time and try not to chew up the bumper beam as much as possible, but it is a very tight fit, so you just want to take your time and cut those studs off. And we're going to repeat that for the other two inner holes on our bumper beam on the other side. Once you have the four studs removed from the bumper beam, you want to get some silicone, and we're going to put a bead around each one of the mounting holes on each side of our bumper beam. And this is just to help in case there's any kind of exhaust fumes that want to leak back into the car. So you want to make sure you put a nice little bead on there, but keep it out of the center of the hole so we don't have to worry about the threads getting silicone on it. But we'll go around each one of the mounting locations and put a bead around it. At this point, we're going to lay our hitch in front of our bumper beam, and we want to take our bumper beam and we're going to line up the studs that we have left with the outer holes on the hitch. Just place it over so that it'll go up as one piece. Now you want to get an extra set of hands, and we're going to lift the entire assembly up and put it back on the car. So we'll line up our remaining studs, push them through, and then we want to reuse the factory nuts that we took off on the outer bolts. Just want to loosely get those in place so the hitch and bumper beam will support itself, and we can work on getting the rest of the hardware in. Now for the two holes on the inner side of our bumper structure, we pulled the studs out, so we're going to have to replace those with bolts. I'm going to grab one of the M10 bolts out of our kit. We're going to follow it up with a flat washer, and we're going to push it all the way through. And then we'll move on to the inside of the trunk where we took those nuts off, and we can put the rest of the hardware in. So here you can see where the bolt came through. We want to put another flat washer in place. And then we're going to secure everything down with a nylon lock nut. This is going to be the same combination of hardware for all 4 mounting locations on the inside of our bumper structure. So we'll go ahead and repeat putting the same hardware in the 3 remaining holes. Now that everything's in place, we'll come back with that 16mm socket and we'll tighten up those factory nuts holding the bumper beam in place. And to tighten up our new M10 bolts, I'm going to use a 17mm socket and wrench. I'm going to use the wrench to hold the nut on the inside. I'm going to repeat that for all of our remaining hardware. Now we want to come back and we're going to torque all of our hardware down to the specified amount in the instructions. You want to go back and repeat that for all of your remaining hardware. Now that our hitch is torqued down, we're going to trim a small section of our fascia out. We're only going to be trimming a small section, but you do want to measure. There's a diagram in your instructions that'll give you the measurements, but the biggest thing is you want to find center. Now there is a few indentions in our fascia that'll give you an idea, but the easiest way I found is if you find these 2 openings, and you measure the distance between them, you can cut it in half, and then it'll give you an accurate measurement of where exactly center is. But I'm going to go ahead and use a rotary tool to cut out this small section. Use a razor knife, pair of tin snips, or really whatever you have available. But now we can lift our exhaust back up and start reinstalling all the components. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to put our fascia back in place, but we want to make sure that we plug in our wiring and put all the connectors back in. So we can plug it in. I want to start routing the wires, putting them back in the clips once we get it close enough. Once you have everything lined up, just want to press the fascia in to where all those clips will start catching again. Then we can put all the fasteners back in as well. Whenever you put your taillight back in place, you do want to be careful and make sure that all the studs are lined up before you really push on it. And we can reconnect our electrical plug and start putting all the nuts back in to hold it in place. And again, you want to be extremely careful not to drop the nut on the inside of the body because we don't want to have to go fishing for it. And with our hooks, just want to push those in, making sure you leave that tab sticking out. And then we'll press that center tab in, and it'll lock it into place. We'll start putting all the fasteners back into the wheel well area as well. But with everything back in place, we can close our trunk and we're ready to hit the road. But that'll finish up your look at the Curt Class 1 custom fit trailer hitch receiver on our 2018 Mercedes C-Class.